Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. Yesterday, voters in the St. Louis region cast their ballots to decide on several key issues. Two of the biggest ones we've been covering at STLPR is 1, who will be leading St. Louis's 14 wards, and 2, whether and where legal marijuana will be taxed. Joining us with takeaways about those results, we've got St. Louis Public Radio journalists Rachel Lippmann and Jason Rosenbaum. Rachel and Jason, thanks for being here. I hope you got in a little shut-eye and a lot of coffee if you drink it before coming to the station.
There's never enough caffeine for the Wednesday after an election.
So, Rachel, there were some people using a particular hashtag, which we talked about in their social media posts about yesterday's election. Was that just about the reduction of wards from 28 to 14 or something else?
No, the first reference I could see to this hashtag you're talking about, which was Aldergeddon, was in 2018. It's a quick search, so it's absolutely nothing unique to the 2023 races. I think it's mostly an attempt by online people to describe the chaos that can be local politics. I think we have to keep in mind that most people in the city are not on Twitter, and if they are not as hyper on Twitter as some of us, and probably didn't even know that the hashtag existed.
All right, so insofar as an epic battle, was there one in the elections? And I mean, what do the results show?
I think the results show that the progressive movement that elevated both Jatara Jones and Megan Green to power now has a pretty strong grip if they can hold themselves together on certain issues on the politics in the city of St. Louis. And who won yesterday? Oh, I mean, there were a wide variety of individuals who won. The key races were where two incumbents challenged each other because of that downsizing. That was in the 4th Ward, where Brett Narayan beat incumbent Joe Vaccaro. Narayan, casts his alliances where he thinks he can advance the best. He actually was aligned with Lewis Reed before Lewis Reed was indicted, but he did pick up the endorsement of Megan Green in this round. The second race where two incumbents challenged each other was up in the new 12th Ward, which is the northwest side of the city. That's where Norma Walker, the newest alderwoman and member of the board, was defeated by Pam Boyd.
Mm-hmm. And was that a pretty close contest?
None of the races were particularly close last night, no.
Okay. No, Alderman Tom Oldenburg, who is part of the faction that is opposed to the progressives, won Ward 2 with nearly 60% of the vote.
Well, I certainly think it depends on the issue for the most part. While I think that there is a majority of folks who would identify as progressive, the Black Caucus still remains very strong, and there's still no love lost between the caucus and white progressives. So I do believe that there's still going to be a heck of a lot of compromise that has to take place down at the Board of Aldermen.
Rachel, can you share a bit about this particular group that Tom Oldenburg is part of?
I mean, Tom Oldenburg is sort of his own individual. He's the most conservative member of the board of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen, I think now certainly. He's referring to there the Black Caucus, which is obviously the black elected officials on the St. Louis Board of Aldermen. What I think he was referring to there, though, was the sort of old guard of the Black Caucus, and many of those individuals are now off the board.
So there's a new generation that has come in. And as far as new people who have won these seats, who have never served in these kinds of political offices before, who's new?
So the only real political newcomers were Daniela Velazquez, who's now serving in the 6th Ward, and Michael Browning, who is serving in the new 9th Ward, which is sort of in and around the medical complex, Central West End, Forest Park Southeast, etc. There are 2 other new members of the Board of Aldermen. That will be Alicia Saunier and Rasheen Aldridge. Neither of them, however, are new to politics. Alicia Saunier ran for school board unsuccessfully and then was nominated to the board, and obviously, Rasheen Aldridge is currently a state representative. He will have to resign that seat before he's sworn in.
Mm-hmm. In terms of these wins and losses, there were obviously a few who did not get in maybe where they were expected to win. As a whole, what do they suggest about where the city can go? Like how much progress can be made on some of the things that people are really concerned about?
Well, I think as Tom Oldenburg said in his quote, it will take some compromise to move their agenda forward. On some of these issues, yes, the progressives will be online. Megan Green last night told me that she wants to focus on tenants' rights issues and what she calls transforming public safety. But she's also acknowledging that she will have to make some compromises and that her door will always be open. Progressives are not a monolith in the city of St. Louis. There will have to be some compromises and some deals made, of course. They need to represent their wards as well as the entire city. And that's a balance that these new members, as well as the old members, are going to have to figure out a way to strike.
And to that point, Jason, you had the chance to talk with St. Louis Mayor Tishaura Jones last night. She told you she sees future collaboration with the new board and that she hopes the board can keep some things a little closer to the vest.
Well, I've already been delivering on my promises. So, it fortunately helps when you have a number of people who are like-minded and who also want to see the city win again. I don't expect us to agree on everything, but I do expect us to disagree privately and not put it out as a show for everybody to see.
So you're nodding, Jason.
Well, it remains to be seen whether that happens. Oftentimes there are issues that nobody foresees that kind of break political allies apart. Rachel and I both remember vividly how the fight over funding a hypothetical and never realized NFL stadium caused former friends Louis Reed and Megan Green to become bitter enemies. So I think what Mayor Jones is referring to there is I don't think she expects unanimity on every issue. Brett Narayan told me yesterday that he doesn't even really like to be defined as a progressive because each issue can change depending on how he and his constituency feels about that. But
I've heard the same thing about Ann Schweitzer, too, now of the first ward. So that's a southeast part of the city, right, that, they focus on representing their constituents. But continue, Jason.
Well, and I also just think that the city has a lot of monumental challenges ahead of it. Like the crime problem has been endemic for a number of years, if not decades. But I think that there is some expectation that this progressive faction actually has to move the needle and reduce crime. And also, with all the money that's available to the city, I think there's also expectation that something is done with it that actually makes city residents' lives better.
And I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind, too, as well, is that because of the transition to 14 wards, all of the aldermen had to be up at once. They had to reset. But to stagger the terms, some of these individuals are running for 2-year terms. Some of these individuals are running for 4-year terms. And how they see the landscape in their ward and how they perform may also constrain on what issues they decide to align. And then there's the mayor's race in 2025. Are people going to want to take a run at her, protected by the fact that they're running for a 4-year term?
Mm-hmm. We're discussing the results of last night's election with STLPR correspondents Rachel Lippmann and Jason Rosenbaum. We had you in, Jason, not too long ago to talk about Proposition M. Did the election itself end up being an epic battle over taxes on marijuana?
No, it was not an epic battle. I would say for the vast majority of ballot items in cities and counties, although there were some that failed in I think North St. Louis County.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most of them passed overwhelmingly. There were not opposition campaigns here. Even people that I think are not enthusiastic about paying a lot of taxes on marijuana products, I think they knew that a trade-off of it being legal they would have to pay some sort of taxation. It's still lower than Illinois.
It is still lower than Illinois.
And, I
don't know this from personal experience, but household experience.
Neither do I. But I do think that it's not surprising that a lot of these passed because there really wasn't a good reason not to implement them.
Uh-huh. Was there anything at all about muni-level results that stood out?
Yeah, Rachel mentioned that there were several African American municipalities in St. Louis County that I think rejected them. And also, she mentioned that I think some of the African American wards in the city also rejected the city marijuana tax. So I don't know if that's just a desire to have cheaper marijuana or maybe mistrust that the governments are going to spend that money efficiently. It's hard to kind of peer into voter decision making there, but it could be a combination of both things.
Jason, the other one that we were noting too is that incredibly narrow margin in the Ferguson mayor's race, where incumbent Ella Jones staved off a challenge from Nick Kassoff, a white resident of Ferguson. Sort of a leading, he would be out there during the Michael Brown protests, but is still kind of I won't say. I don't want to use the term gadfly, but...
No, he's been a longtime resident of Ferguson, and he was active in the Ferguson protests. I know him very well. I've quoted him many times in my Ferguson coverage. And, I think that race was actually pretty heated because Kassoff, has a dedicated record from many years ago of being very conservative. From talking with him, I think that he has changed his political views on things. He tends to be more libertarian on issues. But he also was just very, he was very driven to action by Michael Brown's death. And I think it did change him. And I think it was very notable that that race was so close. It could signal there's a lot of dissatisfaction with Ella Jones and how the city is being run right now.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see and to kind of keep an eye on.
Before we leave marijuana taxes, we did have a quote from Steve Ellman, the St. Charles County executive. And he seems pretty sure that they've got a good thing going. I mean, there's a dispute over whether countywide taxes can be collected at all dispensaries within a county border or just unincorporated areas.
If somebody challenges it, I'm quite sure that the courts are going to agree with my attorney and myself that the section that deals with taxation makes it quite clear that it is a countywide tax, and that means St. Louis County can collect it everywhere. Franklin County can collect it everywhere, and so can St. Charles County if the people give us the right to do that.
So is it as clear as he says it is?
I know it's not because the marijuana industry and municipalities do not want quote unquote stacking, which we talked about extensively on a previous episode of St. Louis on the Air.
We did.
And the Department of Revenue didn't actually help either.
No.
Right.
They deliberately muddied the waters.
So I think this is going to end up in court. It's a decision that will have major financial implications for counties. It's the difference between a place like St. Charles collecting $1 million and $0, and a place like St. Louis County collecting $3 million and maybe less than $1 million.
We don't know, of course, what sales are going to be in some of these dispensaries. These are all, approximations. The city itself didn't even put a financial statement out, financial estimate out for the tax impact.
So, Elaine, if you're asking what the epic battle with marijuana is going to be, it's going to be an epic battle in court to decide whether the countywide taxes apply everywhere or just unincorporated areas.
Well, there'll be snacks at this epic battle?
There should be, shouldn't there? Snacks always help. But, I mean, it's then the taxes, from what I was reading, the piece that you had published, was that they'll start collecting them in October. So is that what we can expect, is the epic court battle to play out before October arrives?
It's hard to say. It's not out of the question that maybe that court proceeding goes beyond October, but I mean, it probably needs to be resolved by then, because that's the difference between whether countywide taxes get collected at all dispensaries or unincorporated areas. So it has a real impact.
I think the question becomes then, though, what is standing? If these taxes aren't being collected yet, who is harmed by them either being collected or not being collected? And I don't have the answer to that. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on the radio, but...
Yeah, it would probably be a dispensary in like a municipality that says that they're being damaged because they have to offer marijuana at a higher tax. But we'll see.
So as we finish up, I want to get to Prop C because that is something that you have covered, Rachel. And it did pass.
Very narrowly, but yes.
So what do you think that indicates about appetite for change?
I mean, I think it was presented correctly as an opportunity to really take an in-depth, comprehensive look at evaluating the city charter. Some of the fear may have been that it was going to be this group makes the decisions, there's no say from the voters, and that's not the case. Any decision that these individuals make, whether or not to put charter amendments forward, those amendments would go to the voters in the first place. But even the most casual observer of St. Louis city politics can realize that the charter is a mess, and the piecemeal way that it's been attacked or addressed recently with ballot initiatives, et cetera, can leave some pretty serious gaps. And I think the way to do it is to take a comprehensive look at it and see what parts don't exactly match the other parts and address it all at once holistically, rather than it being an individual group pushing the issue.
Well, we'll look forward to updates on all of these issues in future segments. I hope you get some rest, well deserved. Rachel Lippmann is STLPR's Justice Reporter, and Jason Rosenbaum is the Politics Correspondent for STLPR. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks,
Thanks, Elaine.
This episode was produced by Emily Woodbury.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our production intern is Avery Rogers.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Our podcast proudly supports St. Louis artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.